Okay, this is Jamie's second major inquiry of the year, and I'd like to have him to explain a bit of what it was, and then we can talk about it later. Okay, Jamie, you're on.
Right, hello. Thank you. So as Lorraine said, this is the second inquiry that I've done this year. We started learning about democracy and the Haudenosaunee, which are composed of 6 First Nations in Canada. And they would conflict a lot, and they finally joined a confederation called the Haudenosaunee. So I thought from there we would go to something which is maybe a little bit more authentic and something that the students can relate to more. So I decided on an inquiry about conflict. So our essential question is, to what extent peaceful solutions to conflict lead to a better quality of human life? Students had the choice of 7 topics, and I'll go through 4 of them. They work in groups of 4 with differing levels. The first is on conflict over oil. We don't know for sure when oil was first discovered, but we know that it's been in use for 3,000 years, first at the start of the Persian Empire. The Chinese were in fact some of the first people to use oil by transporting it on trucks and through bamboo pipes. Obviously, when oil runs out, it's going to cause major conflict with human civilization and not just between civilizations. We're also looking into environmental conflict, how we conflict with the environment through polluting and through global warming, and how the environment conflicts with us through natural disasters. The third topic is on conflict over water. In the past 50 years, there have been over 1,800 countries that have had interactions that have both been conflictual and cooperative. And in the next 50 years, they predict that most of the wars in the world will be fought over water and not over religion. Right now there's 245 countries that share trans-boundary water basins, so we can see how that would be a problem. Last topic is a bit controversial. It's between the religious and territorial conflict between both Kashmir, as Kashmir is fought between India, Pakistan and China, mostly between India and Pakistan, between Hindus and Muslims, and between Tibet. And we all know the conflict with Tibet. For territory, and there's a conflict in belief systems between the ethnic Tibetans and communist China as well. Okay. When we talk about controversy, if I can just show you this note from the Alberta curriculum, it says that controversial issues that have been anticipated by the teacher and those that may arise incidentally during instruction should be used by the teacher to promote critical inquiry and teach thinking skills. Some of the lines of inquiry that grade 6-1 came up with yesterday, some of them are really great. Why do religious groups feel the need to criticize each other? How will we survive without oil? I think that's a really great question. How will we survive without oil? And another, how does water create conflict? During the division meeting a few months ago, I should say, Lorraine spoke about transforming understanding rather than transporting knowledge. With a textbook, it's so easy to transport knowledge, but with an inquiry unit, once the planning is done, it's easy to transform understanding. I, as much as anyone, like to be the sage on the stage, but it's great to be a guide on the side just as much. Lorraine.
Well, thank you, Jamie. So over the 2 years that we've worked together and you've worked with Ed, that's probably your key thing, is going from transportation to transformation, you're saying?
Yeah, we all ordered some textbooks last year, and I've used them maybe 5 times, so I hope Riel's not watching this. But really, I think that's the main thing that I've learned, definitely.
Okay, thank you. And we're going to talk a little bit about how the non-essential questions can lead to the essential questions. Like Jamie talked about the conflict over oil, saying that they had to know when oil started, the history of oil, to understand the conflict. And that's sort of going to be what we're talking about today a little later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Courtney, we did the grade 1 on old and new. What do you think was the most important thing that you learned from the inquiry, the most important part working with me?
The most important thing that I got out of it was how important the planning process was. I realized that if you don't have a solid plan, if you don't sit down with your teammates and know where to get your resources from and sort of know the direction that you're heading before you start, then you really have nothing to go on. So that's what I thought was the most important part.
And what was the biggest difference between another unit and an inquiry unit, do you think?
You're putting me on the spot here. I think that it's just basically like it's for the students to grasp that information. So we can share what we know and activate some of that background knowledge, but it's for the students to make those connections rather than the teacher to point them out.
Thank you very much. So Dan, you did the Bridges inquiry with
Yep.
Ed, and what did you feel about working on an inquiry like this?
Well, I found that the students they did some tremendous structures that they built, and for me the most important thing was they were able to describe afterwards what caused their structure to fail, and they could use the vocabulary of symmetry, center of gravity, and materials to describe why it failed and how. So for me that was very valuable.
And what would you do differently next time?
I think next time I would add more structure into the process. The process is very organic and letting it create itself. I think next time I would set certain targets and certain benchmarks that they would have to accomplish, in the different stages, and that would sort of make it a little bit more structured.
Okay. Let's go over and take a look at some of your best ones here.
It's built you see the whole in the same place.
Okay, so this is an example of a tower that they had to build, and it had to meet certain height requirements, and it had to use certain materials. And so this one was made of paper, and this was actually a second effort. The first effort didn't go very well, but the second effort was quite good. And the students were able to identify that the symmetry, was slightly off on this one. So when it finally failed, it failed because of lack of symmetry. Whereas other students tried different designs which did not fare as well, with that material. And again, very strange design with poor symmetry, poor center of gravity, but the idea of twisting the material increased the tensile strength of it, and this one actually bore the most weight of those three.
Okay, hi, Cassie and I did the flight unit in grade 6, and Cassie, what was the most important thing that you got from working as a team?
Well, I think the most important thing is, or the most important thing was finding and planning an inquiry unit that was not only fulfilling curriculum expectations, but it would be something that was relevant to the kids, that they would have fun, and that they would learn from. A lot of the sort of lessons and sometimes the units that we have might be outdated and may not be relevant to let's say 21st century, for example, for flight. So what I was hoping to do was not only fulfill the Alberta curriculum expectations and the objectives for science, but as well create something for them that is authentic, that they've never done before and they've sort of had to think outside of the box for.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.